Horse saves sheep stuck in a fence. What they do after will leave you in tears. The golden rays of dawn spilled across the rolling hills of Sweetwater Valley, painting the dewy grass with a shimmering glow. The farm, nestled in the heart of the valley, was home to an array of animals, each with their unique personality. At the heart of this lively cast was Willow, a gentle yet strong dapple-grey mare with a white star on her forehead and an elegant flowing mane. She had been the farm's steadfast guardian for years, her calm demeanor bringing peace to the other animals. Before we continue with the video and dive deeper into the incredible story, I want to ask for your help. I'm aiming to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and your support would mean the world to me. If you've been enjoying this content, please hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. And let me know where you're watching from in the comments down below. This morning began like any other. Lila, the farm's owner, walked through the paddock carrying a bucket of oats, her cheerful whistle floating in the crisp air. Willow stood near the fence, grazing lazily but keeping a watchful eye on her surroundings. The rhythmic clucking of chickens and the distant bleating of sheep added to the serenity. As Lila refilled the water troughs, she noticed something odd. One of the sheep, Daisy, was missing from her usual grazing spot near the grove. Daisy was a timid ewe with soft white wool and expressive dark eyes that seemed to communicate every emotion. She rarely strayed far from the flock. Lila furrowed her brow and scanned the pasture, her gaze eventually landing on the far corner near the old wooden fence. There, struggling and tangled in the weathered planks, was Daisy. Her bleating was faint but desperate, the wooden slats pressing into her wool as she tried to free herself. "Daisy!" Lila exclaimed, dropping the bucket and hurrying toward the fence. Willow, sensing the urgency in Lila's voice, perked up and trotted after her, her hooves lightly pounding the soft ground. The mare's eyes locked onto Daisy, and a subtle shift in her posture revealed her alertness. When Lila reached the fence, she crouched beside Daisy, examining the situation. The ewe had wedged herself tightly between two broken planks, and her legs were tangled in a patch of brambles just beyond the fence. "Oh, sweet girl, how did this happen?" Lila murmured, gently stroking Daisy's head to calm her. As Lila attempted to untangle the brambles, Willow stepped closer, her large frame towering over them. The mare lowered her head, sniffing Daisy with soft snorts. Her nostrils flared as if she understood the ewe's distress. Lila glanced up, a smile breaking across her face. "What do you think, Willow? Can you help me?" Willow responded with a quiet whinny, nudging Daisy gently with her nose. It was as if the mare was saying, "I'll try." Lila watched in awe as Willow carefully positioned herself beside the fence, her movements deliberate and measured. Using her powerful neck and head, Willow pushed against the broken plank, applying steady pressure. The wood creaked, then snapped free under Willow's strength. Daisy bleated softly, her body trembling as she felt the sudden release. With the fence no longer pinning her, Lila was able to untangle the brambles from Daisy's legs. "You're okay now," Lila whispered, lifting the ewe gently to her feet. Daisy wobbled slightly, but quickly steadied herself. The moment she was free, she turned to Willow and nuzzled the mare's leg, a gesture of gratitude that brought a lump to Lila's throat. Willow, ever composed, lowered her head and nuzzled Daisy back, her soft breath ruffling the ewe's wool. Lila couldn't help but marvel at the bond forming before her eyes. She had always known Willow to be protective of the other animals, but this display of empathy and action was extraordinary. "You're amazing, Willow," Lila said, patting the mare's neck. "Daisy owes you one." As the trio made their way back to the barn, Lila couldn't shake the feeling that this moment was the start of something special. Willow's instinct to help Daisy wasn't just a fleeting act of kindness. It was the beginning of a bond that would deepen in ways none of them could predict. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and cast the farm in hues of amber and crimson, Willow stood at the edge of her paddock, watching the sheep grazing in the distance. Among them, Daisy lingered close to the fence, her eyes fixed on the mare. It was as though she was silently thanking Willow for saving her. Lila watched from the porch, a steaming cup of tea in her hands. Her heart swelled with pride as she observed the connection between Willow and Daisy. "They understand each other," she whispered to herself, "more than I ever thought possible." What neither Lila nor the animals knew was that this simple act of rescue would set off a chain of events that would test their courage, deepen their bond, and leave everyone who witnessed it forever changed. The days after the rescue brought subtle but meaningful changes to life on the farm. Daisy, the timid ewe who had once been hesitant to stray far from the flock, now seemed to draw strength from Willow's presence. She often lingered near the paddock fence, bleating softly until the mare trotted over to stand beside her. It was as though Daisy had found a protector and a friend in the dapple-grey mare. Lila couldn't help but notice the budding connection between the two animals. "You've got a little shadow now, don't you, Willow?" she said one afternoon, watching as the mare and the ewe walked side by side along the fence line. Daisy followed Willow so closely that it looked as if they were tethered together. Willow seemed to understand her new role as Daisy's guardian. If the other sheep wandered too close and made Daisy uneasy, Willow would gently herd them away with a flick of her tail or a soft snort. When Daisy rested in the shade of the large oak tree near the paddock, Willow stood nearby, her head lowered as if on watch. Lila marveled at the unspoken communication between them, a language that needed no words, only trust. One evening, as the sun dipped low in the sky and the air turned cool, Lila decided to extend her evening chores to enjoy the peacefulness of the farm. She was repairing the hinges on the barn door when she noticed Daisy pacing near the paddock gate. Her bleats were insistent, and her body language radiated unease. "What's wrong, Daisy?" Lila asked, setting down her tools. The ew's cries grew louder, and her eyes darted toward the horizon. Willow, too, seemed alert, her ears flicking forward and her stance stiff. The mare whinnied, pawing the ground as if urging Lila to follow their gaze. Lila stood, brushing dust off her hands. Okay, I'm coming," she said, grabbing a flashlight. She opened the paddock gate, allowing Willow and Daisy to lead the way. The pair moved with urgency, Daisy trotting close to Willow's side as they headed toward the farthest edge of the pasture, where the woods bordered the farm. The trail became rougher as they approached the tree line, the tall grass brushing against Lila's legs. She kept the flashlight beam steady, illuminating the path ahead. "What are you two so worked up about?" she muttered, her curiosity mingling with a flicker of apprehension. As they neared the woods, Willow suddenly stopped, her body tense and her nostrils flaring. She let out a sharp, piercing whinny that echoed through the trees. Daisy froze beside her, her small frame trembling. Lila moved closer, the beam of her flashlight sweeping across the ground. That's when she saw it, an unusual shape just beyond the fence line. Her heart quickened as she approached. At first, it looked like a heap of tangled branches, but as she drew nearer, the truth became clear. It was a young lamb, its small body caught in the remnants of an old barbed wire fence that had been hidden beneath the undergrowth. The lamb's white wool was matted with dirt, and its panicked bleats were barely audible, muffled by exhaustion. Lila's heart broke at the sight. "Oh, you poor thing," she whispered, crouching beside the lamb. Its dark eyes widened with fear, and it struggled weakly against the wire which was tangled tightly around its legs. Willow stepped forward, her large frame blocking Daisy from getting too close. The mare stood guard, as if to reassure both Lila and the lamb that she was there to help. Lila reached out gently, running her hand over the lamb's trembling body. "It's okay, little one. We'll get you out of here." With careful hands, Lila began to untangle the barbed wire, her heart aching at the shallow cuts on the lamb's legs. She worked methodically, murmuring soft reassurances to the frightened animal. Willow stood motionless beside her, her calm presence a steadying force. After what felt like an eternity, the last strand of wire came loose. Lila lifted the lamb into her arms, its small body surprisingly light. "You're safe now," she said, cradling it close. "Let's get you back to the barn." The journey back to the farm was slow but purposeful. Willow walked ahead, clearing the path with her sure-footed steps, while Daisy trotted behind, her bleats softer now, as though she understood the lamb's relief. Lila carried the lamb carefully, her thoughts racing. Where had it come from? Had it wandered off from a nearby farm, or was it abandoned? Back at the barn, Lila set up a temporary pen with fresh straw and a soft blanket. She cleaned the lamb's wounds, applying an antiseptic ointment while the little creature nuzzled her hand. "You're a fighter, aren't you?" she said with a smile, "just like Daisy." Willow watched from the open barn door, her dark eyes reflecting the soft glow of the lantern light. Daisy stood close to the lamb's pen, her nose twitching as she inspected the newcomer. The lamb bleated softly, and Daisy responded with a gentle nuzzle through the wooden slats. It seemed the ewe had already adopted the lamb as one of her own. As Lila stood back to observe, a wave of gratitude washed over her. "You two knew," she said, her voice filled with awe. "Somehow, you both knew there was someone out there who needed help." Willow nickered softly, her gaze shifting from Lila to the lamb, as if to say, "We all have a role to play." That night, as the farm settled into its usual rhythm, Lila couldn't help but feel that something extraordinary was happening. The bond between Willow and Daisy had grown stronger, and now, with the addition of the lamb, their little family seemed to be expanding in ways she hadn't anticipated. It was as if the animals themselves were weaving a story of compassion and connection, one act of kindness at a time. What none of them realized was that their journey together was far from over. The events of that night had set in motion a series of moments that would test their strength, deepen their bonds, and reveal the true depth of their loyalty to one another. The morning sun cast a warm golden light over the farm as Lila stepped outside carrying a bucket of feed. The air was crisp, filled with the distant hum of cicadas and the occasional cluck of chickens from the coop. She paused, looking toward the barn, where Willow, Daisy, and the rescued lamb had spent the night. She felt a tug of anticipation. How had they settled in after yesterday's harrowing rescue? As she approached, Lila's heart swelled at the scene before her. Willow stood near the pen, her large frame protectively shielding the lamb and Daisy, who were resting side by side on a bed of fresh straw. The lamb seemed more relaxed now, its tiny body nestled close to Daisy's, who appeared to have fully embraced her role as a surrogate mother. Willow nickered softly at Lila's arrival, her dark eyes warm and knowing. "Good morning, you three," Lila said, stepping into the barn. "Looks like you've made quite the team." She knelt beside the pen, offering the lamb a handful of fresh clover. It nibbled at the greens, its movements tentative but hopeful. Daisy bleated softly, and Lila couldn't help but smile. "You've done an amazing job, Daisy," she said, scratching the U behind her ears. "And you, Willow. I don't know what I'd do without you." The farm had always been a place of quiet routine, but the past few days had brought an unexpected vibrancy. The bond between Willow, Daisy, and the lamb had become a beacon of hope, a reminder that compassion could bridge the most unlikely of friendships. As Lila tended to her chores that morning, she couldn't stop thinking about the lamb. Where had it come from? Had it been abandoned, or was someone nearby missing it? Cedar Hollow was a small, tight-knit community, and if someone had lost livestock, word would have spread quickly. Deciding to investigate, Lila made a few calls to her neighbors and the local veterinary clinic, describing the lamb and its injuries. No one had reported a missing animal, which deepened the mystery. "If no one claims you, little one," she said to the lamb later that afternoon, "then it looks like you found a home here." As the days passed, the lamb, whom Lila had named Pip, began to thrive under her care. Its cuts healed, its appetite returned, and it grew more confident with each passing day. Daisy remained a constant source of comfort, and Pip rarely strayed far from her side. Willow, too, seemed to take on a watchful role, often standing guard near the barn while Pip and Daisy grazed in the field. One evening, as Lila was brushing Willow's coat beneath the soft glow of the barn lantern, she noticed something unusual. A faint scar on Willow's flank caught her eye. It wasn't fresh, but it was distinct. A thin, jagged line that ran diagonally across her side. Lila frowned, running her fingers gently over the mark. "Where did this come from, girl?" she murmured. Willow flicked her ears, but remained still, her gaze fixed on Lila. The scar stirred a memory. Years ago, when Lila had first brought Willow to the farm, the mare had been found wandering near the edge of a dense forest. She had been skittish and underweight, with signs of having fended for herself for some time. Lila had never learned the full story of Willow's past, but the scar now made her wonder if the mare had endured more than she realized. "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" Lila said softly, pressing her forehead to Willow's. "And yet, here you are, taking care of everyone else." One quiet afternoon, as the sun dipped low in the sky, a truck pulled into the driveway. Lila, who had been mending a fence near the barn, straightened and shielded her eyes against the glare. A man stepped out, his weathered face kind but lined with worry. He wore a wide-brimmed hat and work boots caked in mud. "Afternoon, ma'am," he called, approaching with a polite nod. "Name's Tom Whitaker. I'm from the next county over." "Afternoon," Lila replied, wiping her hands on her jeans. "What can I do for you?" "I heard from the vet in town that you might have found a lamb recently," Tom said, his tone cautious. "I lost one of mine about a week ago. Thought it might have wandered this way." Lila's heart sank slightly. She had grown attached to Pip in the short time he had been on her farm, but she knew it was possible he belonged to someone else. "I did find a lamb," she said, gesturing toward the barn. "He was caught in some barbed wire near the woods. Poor thing was in rough shape, but he's doing better now." Tom followed her to the barn, where Pip was curled up beside Daisy. At the sight of the lamb, Tom's face softened. "That's him," he said, his voice thick with relief. "That's my Pip." Lila knelt beside the pen, stroking Pip's head. "He's a sweet little thing," she said. "I'm glad he's yours." Tom hesitated, his gaze shifting to Daisy and Willow. "Looks like he's made some friends here," he said. "You've taken good care of him." "They've taken good care of each other," Lila replied with a smile. "I think they've all been through something in their own way." Tom nodded, a thoughtful look in his eyes. "You know, I could take him back with me, but maybe he's better off here. He seems happy, and it looks like he's found a family." Lila's heart lifted. "Are you sure?" Tom smiled. "I think Pip's where he's meant to be." From that day on, Pip officially became part of the farm. With Tom's blessing, Lila continued to care for him, marveling at the bond that had formed between the lamb, the ewe, and the mare. They were an unlikely trio, but their connection was undeniable, a testament to the healing power of love and trust. As the seasons changed and the farm flourished, Lila often reflected on how much her animals had taught her. Willow's unwavering strength, Daisy's quiet resilience, and Pip's boundless spirit had transformed her little patch of land into something extraordinary. One crisp autumn evening, as the sun set behind the rolling hills, Lila stood at the edge of the pasture, watching her animals graze. Willow, with her dapple-grey coat glowing in the fading light, stood tall and proud, a gentle guardian to the flock. Daisy and Pip grazed nearby, their movements synchronized as if they had always been together. Lila placed a hand on her heart, a swell of gratitude filling her chest. "You've all found each other," she whispered, "and in doing so, you've given this farm a soul." And so, under the endless expanse of the evening sky, Lila's farm became a sanctuary, not just for the animals who called it home, but for the woman who had found her purpose in their care. Together, they faced the challenges of each new day, bound by a love that knew no boundaries and a shared story that would continue to inspire anyone who heard it.